Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second last Cultural Competency Fair workshop. My name is Iman Bukhari, and I am a member of the Canadian Cultural Mosaic Foundation, a volunteer group working to improve race relations in Canada. We're hoping this fair is giving everyone that's listening a chance to learn about other cultures. Really, the purpose of this fair is really to allow everyday folks to understand and gain knowledge about our neighbors that we may not normally have the chance to communicate and understand with. This helps create a harmonious society. There's so many practices, items, rituals, traditions, even names, clothing, food, art, and different ways of being that hold meaning to other cultures, and it's important to understand them in order to live respectfully with others. This fair is an Alberta Culture Days event and funded by the Government of Alberta, as well as some public funds generated on our website. Before we begin our event today, it's important to acknowledge the land that we're on. By acknowledging the land, we are respecting the Indigenous peoples, their contribution and ways of knowing, which are reflected through the stories and songs that have lived on this land for thousands of years. This is, of course, an online event, so we're all connecting from different places, but nonetheless, I will take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. The workshop we're about to begin will give a brief overview about dumplings across the world with a focus on the Chinese dumplings and its significance in the culture. The workshop will be recorded and available through Facebook and YouTube with closed captioning. We encourage everyone listening to feel free to leave any comments or questions that you may have and want to communicate with the guest lecturer. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest lecturer. As the only member of her family living in Canada at the time, Churmy Fan and her parents made friends through food. Having lived in Canada for over 20 years now, Churmy enjoys rediscovering many traditional Chinese cuisines and adding her own flair to her cooking. Welcome, Churmy.
Hi, thank you for having me. Hi everybody, my name is Churmy, and I'm really happy to have you guys join me today as I help you on your journey to explore dumplings around the world, as well as a focus on dumplings from China. And in particular, I wanted to focus on the type of dumpling called jiaozi. So, next slide, please. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background about myself. So I was born in China. Look at how cute I was back in the days. And my family and I first moved to the US when I was 8, and then we moved to Canada a couple of years later. And through all of that experience and through growing up in the Western society, I felt like I was starting to lose touch with my roots and where I came from. And in fact, my family actually has very deep ties, even to this day, with rural China and traditional Chinese culture. So you can see in the picture above, that's actually taken in my hometown where my grandfather lived in his youth. And we still have family there today who are still farming in the land. They grow crops like yams, and they raise their own animals, chickens, ducks, and pigs. And so I found that was a really beautiful sort of lifestyle, and I really envied sort of the simplistic way of life. But I found that it was harder and harder for me to connect with my family. So as I got older, I tried a little bit harder to get to know my roots and get to know sort of the arts and culture and traditions, such as the tea ceremony and different kinds of dancing. And what I found was that one of the issues was that there was still a language barrier between me and my family. Even though I speak Chinese relatively fluently, I found that there was still a lot that was missing in communication. And so I started to use food as a way to connect with my family, because as we all know, food is a universal language in some ways. Next slide, please. And so through my cooking, I've tried to incorporate new techniques and new ingredients to traditional Chinese cooking. And so I experimented with different kinds of fish, different kinds of noodles, side dishes, as well as, yeah, just different types of Chinese cooking, but adding my own little twists and fun little ways to represent the dish. And so one of my favorite sort of cuisines to try and replicate and learn how to make properly are dumplings. Next slide, please. So I've experimented with a couple of different types of Chinese dumplings. Some of them are steamed, such as the baozi, which is the two on the left-hand side. And these are steamed dumplings. And baozi itself actually means something that is wrapped. So it literally, you put any sort of meat or vegetable filling into this very light and fluffy textured dough, and you steam everything together, and it just makes a really great breakfast. In the middle column, the top and the bottom pictures are wontons. So I love spicy Sichuan wontons. So I'm from the part of China called Sichuan, where we are known for our spicy food. And spicy wontons, believe it or not, we eat that for breakfast, and it's delicious. And wonton itself, actually, the word means swallowing cloud, and that's actually what it feels like when you're eating wontons, because they're so light and delicate. It's actually as if it just slides right through your system almost. And then on the two images on your right hand side are the jiaozi, and these are the types of dumplings that are the focus of our presentation today for you, and they're characterized by more of a crescent shape. And so so with you guys today, I want to go through sort of where dumplings came from, particularly jiaozi, and sort of the history behind where it came from and the significance of jiaozi in the Chinese culture. Next slide, please. So what do jiaozi and snakes have in common? Or actually not jiaozi, what do dumplings and snakes have in common? Actually, dumplings and snakes can be found on every single continent on the planet. So they are probably the most culturally diverse food type in the world. Actually, the word dumpling itself came from a Norfolk dialect that means a lump of dough. And because it's such a broad classification, that means that a lot of different cultures, as long as you take dough and you put something in it, you have made a dumpling. And we can appreciate in the next slide that dumplings can be found in all different countries across all different types of cultures. So for example, here in North America, the Amish have this thing called the Amish apple dumpling that is actually square in shape. Moving on to Europe, in Germany, they have this deep fried round dumpling called the Kartoffelknödel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. If anybody's German in the audience, please correct me if I'm wrong. Moving on to Turkey, they have this thing called manti, and we all know samosas from India. We all love samosas for our lunch, and those are more triangular in shape. And moving on to empanadas in Argentina that actually look quite a bit like the Chinese jiaozi dumplings. And there's also these sort of broad stick type dumplings from Mexico called tamales. And so if we were to do a presentation on all these different types of dumplings across the world, it will take us days and days and days. So for the sake of today, we're going to focus on Chinese dumplings. Next slide, please. Which in themselves have a huge variety. So if you've ever been to dim sum, a Chinese restaurant for dim sum brunch, you'll probably have had xiaolongbao, which is the image on the top left-hand corner. There are these very delicate, small steamed dumplings that contain soup inside. So when you bite into it, the soup comes out. You drink the soup first, and then you eat the dumpling after. It's pretty cool. We also have the wontons right underneath that I mentioned previously, and then the baozi that are next to the wontons. Above that is the jiaozi. And so far, all of these dumplings that I've mentioned are savory. So they are filled with vegetables or meat. But there are also sweet dumplings. So in Chinese dumplings, we have this thing called a tangyuan, which is the image on the very right-hand side. And these are actually a sweet dessert kind of thing that you would eat after a meal. And they're wrapped with glutinous rice flour, and they're filled typically with black sesame paste. Sometimes there's other different types of filling as well, but they're always sweet. So if you've never had a tangyuan, it's quite a treat. I would highly recommend trying it if your local Chinese restaurant offers that as a dessert. So next slide, please. We're going to move on to jiaozi specifically, because as you can see, dumplings across the world have a huge variety. And even when we focus on Chinese dumplings, we can appreciate that there's a huge variety of Chinese dumplings, and they all are their own art form in a way. So for today, we're going to focus on jiaozi as a cuisine. And even within jiaozi themselves, they can look quite different. So on the top right-hand corner, the jiaozi could simply just be taking a round wrapper and folding it in half, kind of like a pierogi, and that will probably be the most basic type of jiaozi. Or you can get kind of fancy with your styles. The one on the pair of chopsticks there can actually sort of sit upright, and they're kind of cute. They look like a little boat. You can get even fancier than that with your little sort of swirly pleated edges in the middle, or you can have the fanciest looking jiaozi on the bottom there that almost look like leaves. So the making of the jiaozi, it can be its own art form as well, and it can take a long time to even just perfect making the dough itself. So moving on to the next slide. So I wanted to sort of introduce to you guys a background, a brief history of when jiaozi was first discovered. And I actually had to do a lot of digging myself because I didn't know before today, or before working on this presentation. So jiaozi was originally invented in 200 AD. So just to give you guys an idea of what that time was even like, remember the Emperor Marcus Aurelius from the movie Gladiator? So he had gone to war with Germanic tribes during his reign, and then he passed away. His son Commodus, who was kind of crazy, took over, and then this whole Gladiator sort of movie played out towards the end. Well, that was around the same period of time as when jiaozi was invented. Now, next slide, please. Now, during this time when ancient Rome was going into war with the Germanic tribes, China had its own war that they were dealing with then as well. So this time was during the time of the Han Dynasty. And there was a lot of poverty and people were struggling. So the peasants actually revolted against the emperor and massacred pretty much all of the government. And it was during this time, next slide, when dumplings or jiaozi was first invented. So a man named Zhang Zhongjing, I don't know how we know his name still, but it was recorded in history that this man had gone to war, and he finally returned home after many years of absence. And he returned home during the winter. And when he noticed that they were suffering from a very an unusually cold winter that was very long, and people were suffering from frostbites. In particular, they were suffering from frostbites in their ear. And so apparently this Zhang Zhongjing man also had some background in Chinese medicine. And so he decided to take it upon himself to try and help his family and friends out in his village. And so what he did was he took meat, I think it was mutton, and mixed it in with some Chinese herbs and vegetables and wrapped them in dough and boiled them. Now, I don't know if this actually successfully cured the frostbitten ears of his friends and family, but it seems that they really liked the food that he made, and so the rest, as you can see, is history. So next slide. So that was a pretty fun story about where dumplings probably came from, but there are other sort of origin stories as well. And so it's really up to you which one you decide, which one you believe in. Sometimes they can both be true. And so another sort of explanation about where jiaozi came from is that Chinese culture is, we really enjoy symbolisms, and particularly we enjoy symbolisms of prosperity. And so a lot of the times, if we feel like, if we made something into the shape of, say, precious metal ingots that we use for trade, and we ate them, then maybe prosperity will come to us. And so the other idea of where jiaozi came from was that they were trying to make a type of food that kind of resembles the currency at the time. So you can see in the image, these sort of ingots kind of look like a dumpling, like a jiaozi shape. And so to me, I think both are equally likely stories. I like the story about the ears and the and the frostbite, but maybe both are true. So we'll see. We'll let you be the judge. All right, next slide, please. So now that we sort of have an idea of where jiaozi originated, I wanted to sort of go through with you the word itself. Now, Chinese characters, as you can appreciate, are quite complex, and like it can be very daunting trying to memorize all these texts. And I will not pretend like I know how to read Chinese, but I wanted to go over sort of the writing of the word itself, because it's really quite interesting. And I only, again, learned this after doing some research for this presentation. So jiaozi is composed of two words. So the zi word on the second word zi actually just means something small and discreet. Often it's something that's kind of cute. And so, but the word on the left-hand side, the word jiao, is really quite interesting. So oftentimes, actually most of the Chinese characters that I can think of are comprised of multiple components. And so each component sort of help formulate the meaning of this word. So oftentimes one part of the word will be another character that sort of sounds like the word you're trying to say, and then the other part of the word will be a meaning for this. And so that's probably a little bit confusing, but it'll become more clear as we move on to the next slide. So if we split up the word jiao into its two side components, well, what we find is that the word on the left-hand side is the word shi, which means food, and the word on the right-hand side is the word jiao, which is connect. So for example, when we say making friends, we say 交朋友. Or if you want to say how do we socialize, we would say 交往. So the word 交 just means to connect things together, and often it's used in a context of relationships and interpersonal connections as opposed to a physical connection. And so taken together, the word 饺子 literally means food that connects people together, which is actually quite heartwarming if you ask me. And in fact, my mom is a very social person, and I think she's watching with us today. She used to love hosting dinner parties, and one of our favorite things to do with our family friends was to make 饺子, because, well, for one thing, everybody pitches in on the cooking. And also, it's a very interactive kind of activity. You know, we'll have one person who is in charge of making the dough, another person would be in charge of kneading the dough, and then you will have like an army of 10 other aunties who are going to work together and make form the final 饺子 in the end. So it's really fun, and we've actually translated our traditional family parties with my mom's group of friends to my own friends later on, and we would have dumpling parties with our more contemporary, younger groups of friends, and we would make kind of fun shapes. At one point, I made a jellyfish-shaped dumpling, which is kind of cool. But anyways, enough talking. Let's move on to showing you guys how to make some dumplings. All right, so I'm gonna turn the camera angle down so you guys can see. So you won't see me for a little while. All right. So here, now earlier I mentioned that, you know, when my mom has dinner parties and stuff, we would have her friends, you know, knead the dough and roll it out. But that is actually quite difficult. And so with modern technology, we have these ready-made 饺子皮 or dumpling wrappers that we can just buy from the store, and they come in perfect circles. And something you might ask is, why do I have vegetables in this bowl that I have with my dumpling wrappers? And this is kind of a trick. I like to pull different ideas from different styles of cooking and use them sort of to help with, you know, completely unrelated styles of food. And putting vegetables in an airtight container is what I do to rehydrate beef jerky after I dehydrate it. And I found that if you store 饺子皮 or dumpling wrappers by themselves in a container, they dry out pretty quickly. So if I put something in like fresh vegetables inside, they actually release some moisture, but just enough to keep it soft and pliable without making it too wet. Okay, so now that we have our perfectly moistened 饺子皮, we're gonna wrap some dumplings. So here is the filling that I made. You can use any sort of filling that you want. Traditionally, we like to use pork, ground pork as the base, and chive dumpling is the bomb. So if you've never tried chive dumpling, definitely give it a try. But you can use any meat and vegetable, or even fish and vegetable if you like, and mix it all together. Now, pro tip that I also learned from my mom is that one secret ingredient that she swears by is this 王子和豆腐乳. So what this is basically tofu blocks that have been fermented, and what it gives is a very nice and like rich and nutty flavor, and they're very salty. So instead of using soy sauce or salt in my cooking for a lot of food, I use this guy and as a replacement. So this is great in dumplings. And also, if you ever try to make beef noodles at home, definitely put this in your broth as well. It will make a whole world of difference. Okay, now that we have our dumpling wrappers and we have our filling, let's make some dumplings. So first, I will show you how I typically like to make my dumplings, which is the type where it kind of stands up a little bit like a little boat. So first I'm going to put a little bit of filling in the middle. Now, a little bit will probably go a long way. Don't get too greedy and fill it all the way to the top, because your dumpling is going to, all your filling is going to squeeze out of the dumpling when you try to put it all together. And I also have a handy little bowl of water to help moisten the wrapper if it gets a little bit dry. Okay, so first things first, I put a little dab of water here, and I fold right across the top, squeeze it nice and tight. So now you can see that there are holes on either side, but the top is closed off. So now I'm going to take this hand or this finger, put it on the bottom of this hole, and just squeeze up, pinch it up until you see a T shape. See that? Now that you have your T shape, we're going to fold one side of the T up against the back of where you initially pinched, and then go all the way around. Just make sure everything is nice and tight. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So pinch to make your T, like that, and then pinch back. And if you find that they're separating, you can just put a little bit of water there. And as you can tell, 饺子 is a labor of love. It's not something you can make super quickly. So appreciate every single dumpling you eat from this day forward. All right, so we've made our first 饺子. Look at how beautiful it is. So it kind of looks like the ingot, right? I don't know if we can't pull up the picture that we had before, but it kind of looks like money. All right. Okay, so in case you missed that, let's try that one more time. We're going to take our wrapper. And we're going to put in some filling. have water, fold it across, our tea. Once you get pretty, you can get pretty quick at it. I've met this one person, one of those street food vendors, and they probably could have made 10 dumplings by the time I'm done making the second one here, if not even more. So it's pretty impressive how quickly they can do it. This one's not quite sticking, so we'll just put a bit more water in there. Okay, so here's our second dumpling. Look at that, so pretty. And they can actually stand nicely on the table as well. So we're going to set that aside. So now we can actually try something else. We can try, why don't we try the nicely pleated one? So we have, now we're going to try a different style. So we'll put our filling in the middle. Going to close it off the top. So this time, let's put a bit of water behind on a spot where we pinched. And so instead of making the big T, we're just going to take a little bit of the dough from the back and just pinch it over. And then put a bit more water in there. Repeat. A little bit more. Repeat. And repeat. There we go. See, it's starting to take shape. So now let's do the other side. Now, if you're in a hurry and you're really, really hungry, I highly recommend buying pre-made frozen dumplings, because this whole process of making it from scratch, it will make you even hungrier. So definitely, my husband and I, we always keep a stash of frozen dumplings from T&T in the freezer downstairs as emergency food. And actually, that's a great thing about jiaozi, is that they're basically a balanced meal in one package. So you have your carbohydrates, you have your vegetables, you have your meat, and actually there's eggs in here as well. I use eggs as a binding agent in my filling. And it really helps sort of tie the meat together so that when you open the jiaozi, it doesn't just kind of crumble apart. So look at that pretty little thing. It looks like a little purse. Okay, all right. Let's do one more of these just to show you one more time. Okay. So dab water, pinch, and then pinch, 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 and just keep repeating. There we go. One more. There we go. That's our second jiaozi. Isn't that pretty? Okay. And that's one thing I noticed about Asian food, is that we really care about how the food is presented. So I totally could have just taken this wrapper and folded it in half and be done with it, because in the end, you're gonna eat it, it's gonna go in your mouth and you're gonna chew it up, right? But actually, I really live by the sort of saying that we eat with our eyes first. So if you can enjoy your food with your eyes before you even eat it, it'll actually make it taste way better afterwards. So I'm all about making the food look pretty first. Okay, so now we went through two kind of increasingly fancier ways of making the dumpling. And while I make this third type, I'm gonna turn on my stove here so that we can get the water going, so that we can start cooking as soon as we can. Okay, so here's another way. So third style here. So same thing, we'll put some in the middle here, and then pinch. So this time, I'll show you what it looks like afterwards, but we're gonna sort of repeat on one side, the same thing as what we did last time. So we're gonna pinch, 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 pinch. And then what we're gonna do, instead of pinching from this side, we're gonna turn the dumpling around and do it from the other side. And you'll see what it looks like afterwards. It looks kind of cool. Pinch. Oh my goodness, it's a little bit dry. Pinch. As you can see, my wrapper's a little bit crumbly, which is why you want to keep them moist, but that's okay. And now we have an S shape. Look at that. It's almost like a yin yang. Okay, let's try that one more time. So like I said, you can literally make your dumplings into any shape you want. In the past, I've made a jellyfish by taking, say, something like this, and I put a second wrapper on top, and then I flipped it around and put little strings of wrappers through the bottom of it. It was pretty funny. It didn't look anything like a jellyfish after I made it, but you know, I had fun making it, and that's what matters. Okay, so now let's try that S-shaped dumpling one more time. So pinch, 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 pinch. Okay, and we're gonna flip it around. Pinch, pinch. Almost there, just a bit more. And voila. Okay. So just in case you guys didn't catch that at home, how these dumplings were made, I'm going to show you the pierogi method, just so that, you know, when all else fails, you at least have some dumplings that you can eat that are edible and functional. So this will be literally the simplest way for you to make a dumpling. So you're going to take some water and just dab it around sort of half of the edge of the wrapper, fold it across, and just pinch all the way flat. So this was what one of the pictures that we saw in the slides. And this will taste just as good as this one, but it won't look as good. But that's okay. Everybody has to start somewhere. So let's make one more of those. And then our water is just about to boil, so perfect timing. Okay. All right, so let me show you what we've just made. So we made 8 jiaozi. This is the first one that we made, so the ones that look like little boats. We then made these fancy ones with the extra frills. We also made these the S-shaped dumplings, and then the pierogies. Which pierogies are their own dumplings as well, but they're not quite jiaozi. Okay, so with that, we're gonna head on over to the stove. So come with me. All right, so we're gonna see if you guys can see. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna try and make 2 different, cook the dumplings with 2 different methods. You can boil dumplings, you can fry them, you can deep fry them or pan fry them, and you can also steam them. So today we're gonna try 2 different methods. We're going to boil and we're gonna pan fry. Okay, so first you wanna boil lots of water. And there is a method to this. You know, like there's always sort of traditional ways of how you cook things, even if it's something simple like boiling. So I will show you the 3 boil method. So I'm going to bring my dumplings over, and I'm going to take our little pierogi guys and just throw them in. 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, that's a lot of water. So because we have a really big pot, when I put the dumplings in, they didn't actually stop the water from boiling, but that's okay. So typically when you have more dumplings to throw in there, your water is going to stop boiling as soon as you put your dumplings in. So after you do that, you just kind of want to gently tease them off from the bottom of the pot because otherwise they might stick. And also we use chopsticks for everything. We use them to eat, we use them to cook, and also we've actually adopted using chopsticks to eat pizza as well. It actually is really handy. It looks kind of funny, but trust me, it works. Okay, so assuming that the water kind of went down, we want to let it boil back up, and then we're going to pour some cold water into it to calm the water down again. So see how that stopped? So we're going to repeat this. We're gonna wait and let the water boil again. That's gonna be the first boil, and then we're gonna repeat that 2 more times, and then the dumplings should be done by then, and they should all be floating, and that should be the perfect doneness for dumplings. Okay, while we wait for that to boil, and I will keep an eye on that, we're gonna move on over to the pan frying. Let me see if I can move you guys over here so you can see. That's okay. That's all right. Okay, so with the pan frying, we don't actually need to use a lot of oil to pan fry dumplings. So I'm going to turn the heat on to medium or medium high. And then I'm going to grab some oil. Here's our next oil. Okay. And then I'm going to just put a little bit of oil on. So it's not that much. It's just a small drizzle, as you can see. Okay. And we're just going to let that heat up. And meanwhile, these dumplings are doing quite nicely. See how they're all floating? We want that to happen. So we're going to let this pan heat up, and what we're going to do is put the dumplings on top, and then we're going to fill them halfway up with water and close the lid. So in a way, the pan-fried dumplings, they're both steamed and pan-fried at the same time. Okay, so this one's boiling again. We're going to pour in some more water. And so this was my second water pour. So that means the next time it boils will be the 3rd boil, and then they'll be ready. And this side's probably ready too. I'm going to put our pretty dumplings on top. Starting to sizzle. Okay, so it's starting to sizzle a little bit, so now I'm going to add water to the bottom of the pan. Just so it sort of covers sort of halfway up the main sort of body part of the dumpling. And then, oh, maybe a little bit more water. Okay, and I'm going to close the lid. So what that's going to do is the part of the dumpling that's not submerged in the water will be steamed, and in the meantime, the water will slowly evaporate. So by the time the water is completely gone, we can turn the heat off, and the dumplings will be done pan frying. Okay, so returning to our boiled dumplings, I think they're ready now. So we're going to take our ladle and take them out. right, so let's bring this guy over. All right, so here's our finished dumplings. Look at how pretty they are. Okay, so you could eat the dumplings on their own, but we typically like to have different types of dips with them too. So I'll show you a couple different dumpling dips that I like to eat myself. And they come in different styles. So in the northern parts of China, they actually like to eat their dumplings just dipped in vinegar. So this is a type of rice vinegar that's made with fermented glutinous rice, and it's this dark color, and it comes in these glass bottles with a yellow label on it. If you like vinegar, you'll like this dip. If you're not so much into vinegar, let's skip that because you probably wouldn't enjoy that dip. Or you can alternatively go for something that's a little bit more conventional. So this one is just soy sauce, sesame oil, some garlic and cilantro and green onions. Or if you are like me and you love spicy food, I like to make like these sort of spicy and sour and sweet dipping sauce. So I would add vinegar, sugar, more sugar than you think you need, the chili oil and garlic, cilantro, green onions, all in there, and it's delicious. Okay, so I'm gonna put the dumpling here, and then we're gonna go check on our, there we go. There you go. Okay, I'm gonna go check on our other pan-fried dumplings. Come with me. Okay, so see how the water is kind of boiling quite a bit, and it's going down slowly, so it'll almost be there. We'll just have to keep a close eye on it. We don't want them to burn. All right, so dig in. I'm sorry, you guys, you can't eat any. Next time, maybe once this pandemic is over, we can have a live demonstration and you can enjoy this with me. For now, you're gonna have to watch me eat. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So good. My mom makes amazing dumplings. She, so my family right now, they live in Vancouver, BC, and I've moved to Calgary, Alberta for about 8 years now. And my sister actually moved out when she went to university, and so my mom would make her these giant bags of frozen dumplings, and she would just have that for lunch with her roommate on campus. And I'm so jealous because here I am, I have to make all my own dumplings, whereas she gets a bag of ready-made mom dumplings, which is basically like way better than what I have here. So you're lucky, Celia. I think she's also watching. Okay, let's see, we're almost there with our pan-fried dumplings. Once the water gets down a little bit lower, we can actually take the lid off to just help it out a little bit. So we're almost there, not quite yet. Yeah. See how the bubbles are getting bigger? That means you're getting close. So now let's take the lid off and just kind of let the rest of the liquid sort of just dry off and evaporate. And make sure you don't let it burn. Where did all my dumplings go? My husband just ate all my dumplings. It's okay, I still have one more. He has a tough job, so I do enjoy cooking a lot, but oftentimes they don't always end up exactly how I like, and so I try again and again, and often I will cook the same dish 2 or 3 times in a span of a day. And so his job is to actually help me finish what I cooked before so that I can make more for me to try and him to finish eating. So it's actually a pretty difficult job if you ask me. We're getting pretty close, we're almost there. So I'm just gonna finish this. 1 second. Oh yeah, look at the sizzle here. We're getting really close. So at this point, you really have to watch it because it will burn pretty quickly if you don't. I'm just gonna tilt it and let the water spread out a little bit. Now the benefit of the pan-fried dumpling over the boil is that you get this really nice and crispy bottom, and it's a really cool texture. The boiled dumplings are really good themselves too, but the difference is that they have more of like a slimy texture to them, which is actually quite delicious if you're into that thing. I do like it as well. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the heat down. So I like to use these non-stick pans, and I just shake them. There we go. It's almost like curling. If you guys have been curling, this will look really satisfying to you. Okay, let's check the bottom and see how they're doing. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so I will show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm gonna put these dumplings on the plate, but I'm gonna flip them upside down and you'll see this beautiful crispy texture at the bottom. Oh my goodness, they turned out so perfect. Angus, come eat. Wow, look at that. Okay, hang on, don't eat yet. Look at how pretty they are. Oh, I wish you guys can try this. Too bad. Here you go. Okay, I'm gonna try this. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so crunchy. That was delicious. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining me today. I think that was pretty fun. I'm glad all the timing worked out really well. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm open to any questions that you may have. So take the mic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Churmy. Well, the consensus is that folks are hungry, definitely. So thank you so much for sharing this amazing knowledge. We learned a lot about dumplings around the world, as well as a focus on the Chinese dumplings, and also a presentation on how to make them. So definitely something that I'm going to do right away as soon as this presentation is done. And I kid you not, because I have
yeah, I do wish you guys could try it, because the worst part of watching people cook is not being able to eat it afterwards.
It's true. But still really great knowledge. So we have lots of questions and comments here, and I'll just start pulling them up. One of our team members was actually wondering, when did you first learn to make dumplings, and was it a family bonding activity?
Yeah, actually, so I believe the first dumplings that I ever made were the tangyuan. So in my presentation, I mentioned that that round sweet dessert type of dumpling with the sesame filling. And I actually have pictures of me as like probably 3 or 4 years old. And I mean, you can't screw it up. It's a circle, right? So so my parents, actually not just my parents, but we actually got to know our neighbors really well, and they eventually became my godparents. But I would often just, pop over by their place, and then just to say hi randomly, and then they would invite me in and we would make dumplings together, including the tangyuan. And we make this again, like, with family friends as well, because particularly when we moved to North America, we didn't have any family with us. We were the only people within our family in North America. So my mom, being the social butterfly that she is, made a lot of friends by inviting them over and making dumplings. So she is famous for her dumplings back home.
Awesome. So I love the fresh vegetables in the container trick. I completely agree. And folks saying, "Oh, I wish I had ingredients and I could have made dumplings with you." We had a lot of folks asking about filling. So what is in the filling exactly besides pork? And if
Yeah.
maybe telling us some of the ingredients.
Okay, sure. So I cook. So the way I cook is very much like people, like Sichuan. So you know how when we learn cooking in Western culture, we measure everything out, right? There's like, 100 mils of this, 1 teaspoon of that. In China, when we cook, it's more like a little bit of this, a dash of that, a lot of this, and more than you think you need of that. So I can tell you the ingredients, and I would highly suggest that people go home, find a taste tester like my husband Angus, and just try and practice all these different things, different combinations and amounts of ingredients, and just see what you like best. So in this particular filling that I had, I used pork and 1 pound of pork, an egg, and a bunch of the Chinese chives. So these are not the chives that you buy from, say, like Superstore or a Safeway. These chives you have to get from Asian markets. And then I put in, again this Wangzihe fermented tofu. What else did I put in there? I think, oh, and sesame oil. Sesame oil in pretty much everything. Yeah, I think that's about it. Oh, one more thing, shiitake mushrooms. So fresh shiitake mushrooms, I'll show you. They are delicious. So you can buy them, again, from Asian supermarkets, and they kind of look like this. They have these nice, beautiful patterns sort of on the top there. And so you can buy them dehydrated or you can buy them fresh, but the fresh ones have a texture that you just can't find in the dehydrated mushrooms. And so I chop them up into little pieces and throw them in there as well. And you can always substitute the meat for something else. So for us, we've been trying to eat less red meat. So we've been substituting the pork with chicken from time to time. Today's a special treat for ourselves. And you can also use other types of vegetables. So any sort of lettuce would work. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind when substituting other types of veggies is that, say, something like this, the fresh veggies that I put into the container, they're actually very high in moisture. So this stock here is full of water. And so when you mix that in with any sort of salt, the water will come out. So if you were to substitute anything else other than the chives in the veggies, you have to first soak them in salt and then wring out the water of the veggies before you add it to your filling. Otherwise, it'll get really mushy. Pro tip.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing all these pro tips, by the way. Someone's
Yeah.
wondering about the fermented tofu paste, where they can get it.
Asian supermarkets. I don't think I've seen them elsewhere before. There are lots of different brands of them. So this one, I'm trying to see if there's English on the label, but oh yeah, it's called preserved red bean curd tofu ferment. Oh, that's French. Okay, fermented red bean curd. So if you go to an Asian market and ask for that, they'll probably direct you to that area. And this particular one just has this yellow label on it.
Awesome. Someone's wondering if they can be put together and then frozen.
Yeah, definitely. So that's what my mom does for my sister, Lucky Celia, is after you've made the dumplings, before you cook them, you can, hi Celia, you can put them into a tray. So line up your dumplings so they're not touching each other. Line them up in the tray, so like sort of like a cookie sheet or something like that. You can pop them in your freezer, and as soon as they freeze on the outside, you can put them in a bag and store them in the freezer for quite a while. And when you take them back out to cook, it will take a little bit longer to cook them from frozen, but the same techniques apply. If you apply the 3-boil method, it will cook at the end and should taste pretty good. You can also pan fry them from frozen as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Maureen is saying this takes me back to the early 2000s when I lived in Tianjin area of China. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Does it matter what type of oil is used when pan frying?
No, I just use normal vegetable oil. Uh, I wouldn't use olive oil, partly because olive oil does have that olive flavor. It's not, although actually parts of China actually use a lot of olives in their cooking. I didn't know that until the last couple of years too. New thing that I learned. But olive oil isn't typically good for pan frying things. They're better for salads and things like that. So any sort of vegetable oil is fine. But the pan does matter, so definitely get a good quality nonstick pan. I buy my pans from the Asian supermarkets. They're these Korean brand. Koreans make really good cookware, it seems.
Awesome. Folks are just putting frozen dumplings in their shopping list.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad.
Nice presentation where culture meets food.
Thank you.
Always have dumplings on reserve. Even my hubby will cook them on his own.
Yeah. My husband doesn't cook very much. I mean, I don't blame him. I tend to enjoy cooking, but he will make dumplings on his own once in a while. That and instant noodles.
Good job.
Oh, thanks. That's my mom. Oh. Hi, Mom. The dumpling master herself.
That's Sherry. We have one comment here just saying, lovely presentation, thank you. Can you post recipes for fillings and sauces? And I know you kind of mentioned a recipe, but if you have, maybe you can communicate via email and then I can post it in here as well.
Sure.
So we have something extra here.
Definitely.
That was a wonderful presentation, so well organized. I completely agree. You like knew the angles, knew where you were going. It was
Thanks.
You could easily host a cooking show. There you go.
Oh, thanks. I will add that to my to-do list down the road. I have lots of different things I enjoy cooking, especially beef noodles. That's my favorite, but that will also take several hours, so probably not ideal for a live show.
I missed the earlier part, but this is fascinating. I think making dumplings is a rite of passage.
Definitely, yeah.
Dumplings look like cousins of samosas.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Well, samosas, I guess by definition, are a type of dumpling too.
Definitely. Same in Jamaica, we don't use measurements, a touch of this, sprinkle of that. Cooking for me is an emotional thing that connects me to my people and culture. Yes.
Definitely.
Awesome. And your mom's just saying, nice presentation.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Mom. She's my biggest fan.
Awesome. So thank you so much, everyone, and for joining us. And thank you, of course, to Churmy for sharing her immense amount of knowledge. We've learned a lot about dumplings, what it means for the Chinese culture, even how it looks across the world. And you even shared your tricks and tricks with us. So it's awesome. Thank you so much. And maybe we can have you again to show us how to cook, perhaps in person, once this COVID situation is over.
I would love that, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So everyone, I will share the recipe just on the comments here afterwards. But again, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.